I watched this interview yesterday that Donald Trump did with CNBC, and I think I referenced it yesterday on the show because I'd seen a bunch of it. But a couple of things stuck out to me. One of which was Donald Trump has absolutely no idea how an economy works, how tariffs work, how it's crazy.
We knew
And
that though, but it's funny when you see the evidence of it.
yeah, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't see it in such a stark way until he really starts responding to questions. And he is a BS artist, right? He's a con man. So he has no real knowledge of anything. David K. Johnson says this all the time. Donald Trump has no real knowledge of anything. And you really see it as he spins just words and stuff and this and that as he spoke to the CNBC guy. So he calls into CNBC, and we'll play you some of this. And I may start and stop just to make a couple of points. But here's what it looked and sounded like.
Like the overall numbers, and it was a big number. And obviously,
the numbers were rigged. The labor numbers
were rigged. Biden wasn't doing well. He was doing poorly. They announced these phenomenal numbers 2 days before the election. And a little bit before that, always these great numbers. And you knew it wasn't doing well. You knew prices were through the roof and inflation was terrible. The whole thing was bad. But think of it. Then they did the biggest revision, I think, in history of almost 900,000 jobs. And it turned out to be more than that because later on they did another revision. And so they gave phony numbers.
You can stop right here. This is already wall-to-wall crap. Before the election, the same agency, the BLS numbers, Bureau of Labor Statistics, issued actually grim numbers or not that positive numbers for the Biden. There was absolutely no pumping up of numbers. And of course, the inflation numbers were what they were, and they, I think, helped propel this guy into the presidency. But what he's talked about, this is absolutely a fiction, total fiction, wall to wall, and he just keeps spinning all of these fictions as he would continue. Go ahead.
Election. After I won the election, I said too big to rig. But after I won the election, then they announced a downward number, in other words, to bring them back to reality. And I said, wow, supposing I would have lost, I would have blamed that. And people would have said I was a conspiracy theorist. It's crazy.
Elaine Chao was on yesterday, and I know, she was, I think she was labor secretary for 8 years under Bush too. And she was your transportation secretary as well. And she said, the commissioner doesn't really even get involved with the actual minutia of putting all these things together. And there's no way that it could have been, that she could have chosen to rig these numbers to make them look bad. And these are statistical changes based on this antiquated system. And it's just a big leap to go to rigged. And then it also, Mr. President, it makes anyone you pick is going to be, critics are going to say, hey, he's picking a guy that's going to give him or a gal that's giving him the numbers that he wants. So it undermines confidence in the system to some extent. You had, according to many people, all the rights in the world to try to replace a commissioner when hasn't gotten any better. But that is maybe a bridge too far, according to most people.
Well, I think when somebody says the commissioner is not involved, I don't want to get into any arguments with anybody. Why should I? She's a very nice woman.
Exactly.
But when they say that that nobody was involved, that it wasn't political, give me a break. Look, before the election, I had this massive outflow of beauty for Biden. I mean, he didn't know he was alive. And for Biden, the economy was roaring. It was a beautiful thing. And I said, there's no way this is happening. It's going the opposite direction. And 2 weeks later, they said I was right. But even if you look at the original, the ones from the other day, the numbers were very timid. And then they announced something that made them even more timid on top of it. On sort of a reporting day, I don't know why, it just seemed a little bit more important than most times when they announced these numbers.
We talked earlier that the unemployment rate is still low. It's 4.2%.
It's fine. I'm not saying earth-shattering.
No, but
I will say this. The numbers before the election were earth-shattering. I'm not saying
Okay.
these were shattering, but
No,
then
I
they
He keeps
understand.
coming back to that, and that's actually
a couple
not
of
true. He keeps coming
100,000.
back to something that absolutely is not true, and he counts on you not really checking and you not really remembering. It counts on everyone listening and viewing not really knowing, and the guy is wall-to-wall fiction on the numbers before the election. Go ahead, Albert.
To make it look a little bit worse from, months before. I said, where did those numbers come from? So
For as much
look,
as you want
it's a highly political. It's a highly political
Okay.
situation.
Yeah,
it's
now
totally
it is.
rigged. Smart people know it. People with common sense know it. And a lot of people like to keep their head under the covers. And
let's
just
move
not
on to
believe
this.
it.
Which number do you believe at this point? Because if you noticed, suddenly the chances of what you've wanted for months and argued for months, the chances of a rate cut soared because of these numbers. Do you not believe the current numbers because they're playing right into what you want the Fed and Jay Powell to do? They're not horrible, as you said.
Stop for one
You know,
second, Albert, because I
perhaps-
want you to hear this answer. Do you hear what he's doing? Now, Joe Kernan, the guy talking right now, he's a Trumpy. He's a MAGA type guy. All right, so he's trying to spin everything. But even he is having trouble here. Again, he knows because of the Elaine Chao reference that he made. Elaine Chao said, look, the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics has nothing to do with this. She's handed this stuff and, basically reviews it, and that's it. So, I mean, there are at least 40 statisticians there who go over this data, and it's polling data. And you can argue that the polling data is flawed or the methodology is flawed, but that's what it is. And it's continued through administration to administration. And then there are revisions as the additional polling data comes in and fills in details. Now, Kernan is saying, well, which data do you want? Because the new data actually would seem to support what you want, Mr. President, which is lower interest rates. But you're throwing all out the new data. And yet you feel like the old data is what you want? That wouldn't support an interest rate cut. I mean, is everything rigged? You get the absurdity of the entire thing. But here is Trump's answer on which set of data he might apply to his overall desire to lower interest rates. Go ahead, Albert.
With the tariffs, some businesses delayed some spending. Some consumers may have been less certain about the future. So maybe we're seeing a slight slowdown in labor, but you're going to get exactly what you want based on these numbers. Which ones do you believe? Do you not believe the revised numbers either?
It's not what I want. I don't want that. I wanted it a year ago. I wanted it a long time ago. Jay Powell is a highly political, and I think, I call him too late. Jerome, too late. Powell, he's too late. He's too late always. He always has been, except when it came to lowering interest rates before the election, he did. He worked that out.
Who would you replace him with? I know you watch the show occasionally, and we had an extended interview with one of the prospective replacements, Kevin Warsh. Were you watching that day, or
I was? He's very He's very good. He's very good. Sometimes they're all very good until you put them in there, and then they don't do so good. But a lot of them.
The guy they're talking about is head of his
a very good guy.
economic
I think
commission at the White House.
I say Kevin and Kevin. Both Kevins are very good. And there are other people that are very good too. But
Kevin's
a lot of
times, I don't know if that's good.
A lot of times they're very good. Like this character that we have in there now, Jerome Too Late Powell. He was very good. He said, "Sir, I'll keep interest rates so low. I'm a low interest rate person, sir." You could hardly hear him talking over the desk.
Is Warsh
somebody that worked for me was a big fan of his. Not a fan of his. He hardly knew him, but he wanted him so badly. I did somebody a favor. I put him in there.
All right, so now you can hear how he's just blithering on. He's filling, right? He's really filling. I always feel like when you are listening to Donald Trump, it's like listening to a kid who didn't do the reading, do the book report aloud. He didn't do the reading. He's making it up as he goes, and he's just, this would never pass for a book report, but because he's president of the United States, he gets away with this. Play me some more of this interview. We can't play the whole thing, but I'll play you one more little chunk and then talk a little bit about what's happening with tariffs. I do want you to be aware. Sadly, this is really crucial stuff, important stuff. He's monkeying with an economy that was the leading economy in the developed world when he took office. If he had just not touched anything, he would have been fine. But instead, he turned the keys of the kingdom over to Elon Musk and the Project 2025 people, Russell Vogt and the rest of them. And he has dismantled government. And now he is screwing with the American economy and swinging every lever and pushing every joystick that he can. And these are the results. Go ahead, Howard.
Mr. President, it's Andrew here. It's great to speak with
Andrew.
you.
Good.
I just wanted to ask you about, you mentioned tariffs. And on Sunday, you talked again about this idea of dividends for middle and lower income folks that might come off of the tariffs, meaning the revenue that's coming in from the tariffs. And I wanted you to maybe explain how that might work in practice and how you're thinking about that and the trade-offs between paying down the debt, which I thought was something you had been talking a lot about, versus sending checks out, because obviously that creates its own debt for us.
So we're taking in trillions of dollars, Andrew. If you look at Japan, we're taking in $550 billion. And that's like a signing bonus that a baseball player would get. He would get slightly less no matter how good he is, right? But they give a signing bonus of $1 million or $2 million or $20 million or whatever the hell they give today. It's so out of control. But a signing bonus. So I got a signing bonus from Japan of $550 billion. That's our money. It's our money to invest as we like. European Union, $650 billion. Think of it. And they're going to buy $750 billion worth of our energy. And they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And by the way, they're going to open up their countries, which they've never done. Japan has never. If you did business in Japan, they would arrest you. You're not allowed to do any business. And now Japan has totally opened up their country. They're even taking our rights.
I'm sorry to have to stop it again, but again, this is total BS, okay? There's not $550 billion worth of coming from Japan. This is an absolute fiction. Once again, any numbers you hear him...
Hey, we're not getting a signing bonus from Japan?
Absolute insanity. Go
What?
ahead, Albert. Go ahead.
Nobody said was possible. But more importantly, they're taking our cars. They're taking the very beautiful Ford 150, which does very well, and I'm sure will do very well there. And other things that do very well here will also do well there. You'd be surprised at some of the great things we make. But Japan has opened up. All of these, Indonesia's opened up their country. South Korea has opened up their country. But not only opened up, and that's going to be huge business. When you open up South Korea, it's a closed country. And now all of a sudden we're allowed to sell cars into South Korea and trucks and SUVs. I mean, we're really opening it up. Vietnam is opening up their country. You know, these are all closed countries. But the EU was closed.
I don't know what that means.
Take our
I really don't know what that means. I mean, there was free trade and a trade back and forth with both the countries you mentioned. We mentioned Vietnam and South Korea. I don't know what's happening here. This guy he's a loon, man. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's just so nakedly clear the more he says. And he's most comfortable. His happy place is Democrats didn't know what they're doing. Biden was infirm. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, the Democrats, everything's political. Because for Trump, everything is political. But when it comes to actually having to administer to the economy, he fires all the people of any competence. The only people who remain are devoted loyalists. So you have reinforced a kind of incompetence that if it's not actually reflected by the person's decision-making process, that is to say, they know better, but they have to make this decision, they have to make it to please the king. Otherwise, it'll be their head on a plate. This is an insane administration that has its feet both firmly on political territory, and to listen to this man speak is to hear the insanity word for word just come out as utter fictions. I don't know what to do with this. I want to listen for another minute or so, and then we'll move on. But it's just extraordinary. This guy is president of the United effing States. It's like if the bully in class who never did any reading, never knows anything, all of a sudden is running the class and running the school. And then running the school system. Give me a little bit more. Do you have a little more, Albert, or are you over this? I'll yield to you.
Mr. President, what kind of teeth, though, are in those investments? What kind of teeth are in those investments, meaning that would force the EU to make those investments? If they don't make those investments, what happens on the other side?
Well, then they pay tariffs of 35%. No, they brought down their tariffs. So they paid $600 billion. And because of that, I reduced their tariffs from 30% down to 15%. And a couple of countries came, how come EU is paying less than us? And I said, well, because they gave me $600 billion. And that's a gift. That's not like, a loan, by the way. That's not a loan that, 3 years comes up, we have to pay it back. There's nothing to pay back. They gave us $600 billion that we can invest in anything we want.
The deal that you
and nobody knows it, Becky. Nobody knows it because they don't know.
No, that we have been trying to figure out the details on that, Mr. President. So
well, there are no details.
Clarity on
the
that.
details are $600 billion to invest in anything I want. Anything.
Okay.
I can do anything I want with it. And the purpose was they've been, ripping us for so many years that it's time that they pay up, and they have to pay up. We couldn't afford to have the deficits. Look, I did something with Switzerland the other day. I spoke to their prime minister. The woman was nice, but she didn't want to listen. And they paid essentially no tariffs. And I said, we have a $41 billion deficit with you, madam. I didn't know her. I said, we have a $41 billion deficit. And you want to pay 1% tariffs. You wanted 1%. I said, you're not going to pay 1%. We lose. Because I view deficit as loss. You have some people. By the way, I think
pharmaceuticals are a big issue with Switzerland. I think.
Well, I'll go into pharmaceuticals. Yeah. They make a fortune with pharmaceuticals, and they make our pharmaceuticals in China and Ireland and everything else. And within the next week or so, we're going to be announcing tariffs on specifically. This is a separate class than the 15% tariffs on sort of everything. These are excluded classes, I call them. I like to call them excluded, like steel, aluminum, etc.
Right, the
well,
232.
We're going to be announcing on semiconductors and chips, which is a separate category, because we want them made in the United States. And by the way, they're being made in the United States. We have the biggest in the world, as you know, from Taiwan is coming over and spending $300 billion in Arizona, building the biggest plant in the world for chips and semiconductors. But on pharmaceuticals, we'll be putting a initially small tariff on pharmaceuticals. But in 1 year,
President
1.5 years maximum, it's going to go to 150%, and then it's going to go to 250%, because we want pharmaceuticals made in our country.
This is
and
absolutely, I'm sorry,
like
and I've got to
Biden
just
did,
stop it because this is A, absurd, B, it's a kind of, it's like a self-own. Like, why would you want to put a 250% or 150% tariff on pharmaceuticals? What does that mean will happen with those who are buying drugs in America? I mean, pharmaceutical drugs needed for cancer treatment, needed for arthritis treatment, needed for whatever. It means that you're going to be paying that tariff 250%, 2.5 times more than the cost of the medication now. And the medication is already more expensive than any other medication you can get in the world. That is to say, go anywhere else in the world and it's cheaper. Americans pay more for pharmaceuticals than any other country on earth. If you really wanted to be the populist president that you say you want to be, you would do something about that, not in the way that you're doing it by saying, well, I want to onshore the production of pharmaceuticals. So in the interim, while we're working on that onshoring, I'm going to tariff pharmaceuticals coming from Switzerland 150% to 250%. It's absurd. It's as though he only understands the word tariffs, which is taxes, import taxes. He only understands that. He doesn't understand incentivizing the production of pharmaceuticals in this country. Much of the production associated with so many of things, steel included, is automated. It's now been offshored. This ship has sailed. Now what you're doing, I'll just pivot to steel for a second, is you're taking steel manufacturing, and it's a fraction of what it used to be. But in Trump's mind, because he's still in 1955, steel production in America is this robust world of, economic potential. Now, go to a steel mill. Tell me how many people are still working there. It's been automated to hell. It's robots working in these steel plants. But even if they had the people that they had, and granted, there are still people involved in the process, that is a slim fraction of the number of people who you are allowing to benefit from the industries that work with imported steel. Think about it. The construction industry, the auto industry. These are industries that employ huge numbers of people, dwarfing the number of people that are employed at these steel plants. Donald Trump doesn't get it, and he surrounded himself with people who are yes men, generically, and women. Tulsi Gabbard is she is the yes woman parade leader. Yes, sir, look what I found on Hillary Clinton, sir. Oh my God, look, Iran, I was wrong. I said they weren't close to a nuclear weapon, but it turns out they were just hours away from developing a nuclear weapon, sir. You're so great. She can't wait to join the cult. The new cult is Trump. So Trump is asleep at the switch, clueless, and in an extended conversation with people who, again, these are people on his team at CNBC. They're Trumpies, a lot of them. Joe Kernan is MAGA man, and he's trying to get the president to say something that is in some way credible, and he can't. Because Trump doesn't know anything. So it's all about, I can spend that money any way I want. And by the way, when he says I'm putting a $600 billion tariff on the EU, you can say that you don't put a tariff and then do the numbers on what's coming out of the EU and come up with 600 billion. No way. You're finding industries in the EU that they just won't do business with the United States. Yeah. You don't know what that number is. We may never see that money. He's inventing this. He is spinning this total fiction, and I feel as though too many Americans just don't get it. So that I wanted to share a little bit of, but man, it's a here is something. This is from a European publication. The European Commission, he talks about, is unable to design and implement investments on behalf of the private sector. The 600 billion that is mentioned and described by the European Commission is an indication based on executives' contacts with industry. So it's a very squishy number to begin with. And the Europeans are just trying to tell Trump something to get Trump off their back. It's utter lunacy. Utter lunacy.
I have a bit of a breaking news story, and that is a bomb threat at a hotel in Chicago where many of the Democrats who fled Texas to avoid this vote on redistricting are staying. One of the Texas state representatives, his name is John Busey III, posted online, "This is what happens when Republican state leaders publicly call for us to be hunted down." And he wrote, "Texas Democrats will not be intimidated." They had to evacuate the hotel, and it looks like everything is okay, but someone figured out where they were staying and called in a bomb threat at the Chicago hotel.
And this is sadly in our future. I think this stochastic terrorism, the one-off terrorism, the lone wolf terrorism, animated by rhetoric on the part of leaders, and no one animates this kind of thing like the President of the United States. It's sad.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.